What's up? Shrey71 here. Just got done watching The Acolyte. Let's talk about it. First things first, let's start off with the cons, since I assume that's what most of you are here for. You know, a big thing in The Acolyte I didn't like was that the showrunners didn't follow one basic rule that everyone creating a movie or show is supposed to follow. And that rule is show, don't tell. Now the problem is The Acolyte did the opposite. It told the audience, but didn't show the audience. And I'll use Osha, the main character, as an example. Osha turned to the dark side in this show, right? She started off as a good guy, and then she turned to the dark side at the end of the show with her, lightsaber bleeding red from the original blue. And the reason they said that she turned to the dark side was, the root cause of it was her training as a Jedi. How, she had all these negative emotions and she couldn't cope with these emotions. So we were like, okay, you're just going to tell us that? You're not going to show us any flashbacks or any scenes, not even one scene of her as a Jedi having some kind of negative emotion or trial or something that would lead her to the dark side. No, they just kind of tell us. But you're not supposed to tell the audience, you're supposed to show us. Because a sentence cannot capture what a scene can, right? A sentence cannot get across the same message. So if we just saw Osha, dealing with that negative stuff as a Jedi, we would understand her fall to the dark side better. I think another main thing that a lot of people were complaining online about was that there were a lot of dumb narrative choices. They weren't huge things that ruined the show, but, almost every episode there was something I could point to that was like, that was a dumb choice. Like, for example, these Force witches on Belcar, I don't remember the name of the planet, Brendok, there we go. Force witches on Brendok took control of a Jedi's mind, and another Jedi fought back against the witches and did her own thing to free the Jedi from the mind control. Somehow, the Jedi trying to break the other Jedi free from mind control killed all the witches. That didn't make any sense at all. Also, May killed, I think, 2 Jedi. She killed Indara and Torben. And Soul kept saying, and all the other Jedi kept saying, oh, let's help May, let's help May. She just killed 2 Jedi. I think she's a little past that. So there were just little things that didn't make much sense in this show. Another huge thing was, again, like I said earlier, Osha's fall to the dark side. It really didn't make much sense at all. I mean, at the start of episode 8, which is the final episode, she's talking to May, her sister, and she goes, oh, all this death, all this destruction, it's all because of you. And they get into a fight about it. And yet she has no problem being around Kimir, who killed loads of Jedi in front of her, including her friend Jecki. That does not make any sense at all. So it's just these little things. They're not huge cons. They're more like gripes, but just annoying things that the show definitely could have done without. And second of all, the acting it wasn't bad. I don't think there was any performance in the show that was bad, but I don't think there was any performance in the show that was great. Like at Andor, you could point at, Diego Luna's performance, Stellan Skarsgård's performance. I'm forgetting her name, but the actress of Bix, almost every performance actually in the show, especially, Mrs. O'Reilly, who played, Mon Mothma, almost every performance in that show was great. And then you get to the Book of Boba Fett, where every performance in that show kind of sucked. This wasn't like that. The acting was just okay. It wasn't anything phenomenal. There was no performance I could point to that was great, which kind of sucked. They definitely could have done with some better performances. I liked Kimir, I liked Osha and May, I liked Soul, but everyone else was just kind of cashing it in my opinion. And yeah, now that the cons are out of the way, let's get to the pros. First of all, I think that this show was really unique and fresh, and it had a lot of new ideas, which is something that recent Star Wars hasn't been able to do. They haven't been able to come up with anything unique, and it's all just a mix of terrible ideas. This actually has some really cool, fresh ideas that I think really helped this show. That I was watching the show and I said, I've never seen that before. That's pretty cool. For example, Kelnaka, the Wookiee Jedi. I know that's in comics and stuff, but seeing him in live action was awesome. The choreography was unlike anything we've ever seen in Star Wars. And I'm not talking about the lightsaber. I'm talking hand to hand. I mean, that was something out of an Ip Man movie, a Jackie Chan movie. It was, especially Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It was just like that. The way they were floating around, kicking, punching, blocking. It was beautiful to see. So they definitely put a lot of time and effort into the choreography. And I think it kind of sucks that no one really talked about it. On the topic of action, the lightsaber battles were phenomenal. I think it's not really debatable that the lightsaber duels in this series were easily the best since the prequels. I mean, Kelnaka versus Sol and Torben had me absolutely hyped. And that's something not a lot of recent Star Wars media has been able to do with their lightsaber duels. So that's a big plus. And secondly, and maybe most importantly, recent Star Wars has almost tried to take away from everything great about the prequels and the originals, right? The sequels took away from Anakin's fall to the dark side. You know, the Book of Boba Fett kind of ruined Boba Fett's character. But this actually added a lot to the prequels. It kind of showed us how the Jedi were always doomed to fail. Especially Sol represents a big part of that, right? All the Jedi do. I forgot her name. The Green Jedi. Vernestra, that's her name. She really represents why the Jedi were always doomed. You know, she hides things from the Council. She hides things from other Jedi. She creates plans in secret. She withholds information, you know? So they did the same thing. There should be no secrecy in the Jedi Order. They're about truth, justice. So when you're doing all these secret plans and trying to gain power, then that's not what the Jedi are supposed to be. And that shows that's what they were doing in the Clone Wars. That's what they did in Revenge of the Sith, where they asked Anakin to spy on Palpatine, you know, where they organized the clones. I mean, not directly, but still, they accepted the clones for war. That's not what the Jedi should be. They were doomed to fail because they forgot about who they are. They're keepers of peace, not, you know, power-hungry cultists. And that's what we see in the Acolyte, and you know how the Jedi in the Acolyte and the Jedi in the prequels were so similar, and how, you know, this is not how the Jedi are supposed to be, and so you're doomed to fail. So it really added a lot to the prequels, which I appreciated. And secondly, the visuals were absolutely beautiful. You know, really classic Star Wars visuals. Especially, you know, the lightsaber duel with Kelnaka, Torben, and Sol was awesome. Especially, I think the highlight was the Sol, maid chase that was in an asteroid belt. It looked beautiful. So it looked really great. It wasn't cheap. A lot of effort put into the VFX. And yeah, the score was also really strong. There was a lot of, you know, I think it added a lot to the emotional bits of the show, and it added a lot to the show as a whole. Overall, do I think the show is garbage? Absolutely not. If you think there's some people that genuinely think this is the worst Star Wars project ever, you're delusional. It's nowhere near as bad as the Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, or The Rise of Skywalker. It's not even close. And it's not nearly as good as Andor or the Clone Wars. I think a huge problem with the Star Wars community is we don't know how to critique mid. The Acolyte is mid. Actually, let's get to the rating now. The Acolyte, I give it a 4 out of 10. Below average. Pretty mid. I would still recommend it if you want to, you know, if you want the prequels to get a boost, if you want to see how the fall of the Jedi was really always going to happen, then I would watch the show. But yeah, this didn't suck. It didn't suck. It was okay to watch. There were some great lightsaber duels. Visuals were nice. Dumb narrative choices. It was a bit of a mixed bag, but it didn't suck. So yeah, The Acolyte, 4 out of 10. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.